Okay, let's dive in. It feels like the world just get a little, well, hair trigger, doesn't it?
So it really does.
Like arguments can just ignite in an instant, whether you're scrolling online or, standing face to face.
Yeah, there's this feeling that everyone's just ready for a showdown. Right here, right now.
And that brings us right to the heart of what we saw emerging from the material you shared with us for this deep dive. It's this powerful urge, almost an instinct, really, we seem to have, to settle disagreements through immediate, often explosive confrontation.
That primal face-off impulse.
Exactly. And then contrasting that with the much slower, more structured path, the legal one.
It's true. And look, this tension between impulse and process isn't exactly new to human history, right?
No, definitely not.
But the stakes, well, they feel incredibly high right now. Looking through the analysis you provided, it becomes pretty clear that societies everywhere are facing a crucial choice.
Which path do we take?
Which path will we prioritize when conflict inevitably arises, rage or reason?
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive, sifting through these documents, is to really unpack why. Why, despite all the frustrations, the delays, the sheer inconvenience sometimes, why choosing that legal framework is just absolutely fundamental for a stable society.
Right.
We want to understand, using the insights, and frankly some pretty vivid examples in this material, what happens when we let that immediate rage override reasoned process.
It's about getting to the core of why structure and process must prevail over just, well, duking it out.
So let's start there with that face-off impulse. When we looked at how it's described in this analysis, it comes across as this incredibly chaotic clash.
Almost entirely driven by ego and raw emotion.
Yes, spontaneous, messy, and feels completely outside any kind of system.
Yeah, unstructured.
And the examples just jump right off the page, don't they? Making it easy to picture.
They really do.
You see it with neighbors in a Mumbai suburb, locked in this furious battle over a parking spot. Simple, but intense.
Or scale it way up.
Scale it up to the intense political standoffs, maybe in New Delhi, or corporate rivals throwing very public jabs in Bengaluru, maybe community clashes in Chennai.
Different scale, same dynamic.
What links them all is that core impulse, trying to settle things head-on, through sheer force of will or emotion, kind of bypassing the system entirely.
And you can understand the temptation, can't you? I mean, face-offs feel quick in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Instant gratification almost.
There's a certain rush, maybe a perceived efficiency or thrill even, in confronting someone directly, just trying to shout your grievance louder or assert dominance.
But that's the trap, isn't it?
It is, because what the examples in your material demonstrate time and again is that despite that immediate, visceral appeal, face-offs almost never truly solve the underlying problem.
Right. They're temporary fixes at best.
They're temporary, they lack any lasting framework, and crucially...
They almost always escalate, right?
Exactly. Think about that Noida food delivery situation we saw mentioned.
Oh, yeah, the biryani incident.
Right. The dramatic online reaction, the explosion of memes. It was entertaining for a moment.
Yeah.
But where did the actual resolution, the accountability have to happen?
It had to go through the legal system.
It required engaging the legal system. Public shaming on social media might get you likes, maybe, but it's the courts that have the power to deliver justice and enforce outcomes.
And that risk of escalation you mentioned is a really critical point. Your material points to the India-Pakistan context, especially after events like Operation Sindoor. Drawing some tough lessons, it seems, from things like the 2016 Pathankot attack and the 2019 Balakot strike.
Right. The analysis suggested that the military bravado, that immediate retaliation, it felt powerful, sure.
It scratched that face-off itch on a national scale.
It did. But it didn't guarantee lasting peace or stability. Ultimately, the ceasefire talks that followed had to emphasize diplomacy and, well, legal frameworks.
Relying on agreed-upon rules and structured communication.
That became the necessary path forward. It just shows the clear limits of relying purely on confrontation, even at that level.
You see this dynamic even in the corporate world, too. Less physical blows, maybe?
Hopefully.
But plenty of press conferences and PR stunts that act like corporate face-offs.
Oh, absolutely. The situation with the 2025 WBSSC recruitment scam in West Bengal is a prime example from your documents.
That was the one with the canceled appointments.
Yes, the Supreme Court upheld the Calcutta High Court's decision to cancel over 25,000 appointments found to be fraudulent. Now, that verdict, delivered through the legal process, that brought clarity,
Accountability.
Accountability, and a path towards actually rectifying a massive wrong. Now, imagine the sheer unresolvable chaos if everyone affected had only taken to the streets in protest.
It would have been pure noise.
Plenty of drama, yes, but none of that necessary systemic resolution.
So, okay, if the spontaneous showdown is the chaotic, often failing path, your material then directs our attention to the alternative, the
Yeah.
legal process.
The unsung hero, as the analysis puts it.
Right. Definitely not flashy, and certainly not fast.
No, it's not. But it is the fundamental backbone of a civilized society. You have to think of it as the essential referee.
Keeping things from going completely off the rails.
Its core role is to ensure that when disagreements happen, and they always will, they are settled based on evidence, reason, and a commitment to fairness.
And those three things, evidence, reason, fairness, they're often the very first things thrown out the window in a heated face-off, aren't they?
Instantly.
Gone.
And we saw concrete examples of this system, despite its perceived slowness, quietly doing exactly what it's designed to do.
We did. Take the Supreme Court ruling on May 20, 2025, regarding those environmental impact assessment rules, the EIA rules.
Right, the guidelines for development projects.
Exactly. The court upheld regulations that actively work to balance the demands of development with the crucial need for environmental protection. That's a complex balancing act.
It really is.
Or there's the Delhi High Court's clarification, May 22nd, 2025, about the Indo-Swiss Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement, the DTAA, the tax treaty.
Yes. The court ruled clearly against using invalid references under this treaty to try and dodge tax obligations. Again, precision, rules, evidence.
And as we just touched on, that Supreme Court decision upholding the Calcutta High Court verdict in the WBSSC scam, it brought crucial clarity, a path forward where pure confrontation would have just left confusion and anger.
Absolutely. These cases really highlight the system's ability, when it works, to cut through an incredible amount of noise and complexity with precision. It applies established rules and principles.
And its role as a neutral arbiter seems absolutely critical for stability.
Hugely. The editorial from May 16, 2025, that discussed tensions between New Delhi and state governments over Article 131, that was particularly insightful.
Article 131 that allows states to directly sue the central government or other states in the Supreme Court.
That's the one. The analysis points out how the court's involvement prevents these high-stakes disagreements, which could easily become incredibly destabilizing standoffs from just spiraling into anarchy. It provides a forum, a process.
But, okay, let's be real. This is the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
The legal system is absolutely not perfect.
Oh, far from it. The material is very clear on that.
The flaws are significant.
Yes. And the delay is a massive, undeniable issue. The analogies used in the analysis were pretty vivid.
I remember those. Slower than a buffalo cart.
Slower than a buffalo cart, takes longer than waiting for food delivery during a monsoon downpour.
Or even longer than trying to finally finish binge-watching some huge Netflix series.
Right. The sheer backlog of cases is just staggering. As of May 2025, millions of cases are pending across India.
Millions.
With some litigants waiting not just months or even years, but decades for resolution.
Decades. That's not justice.
As your material points out, that isn't justice operating. It's an incredibly difficult, often crushing test of patience and endurance for everyone caught in the system.
And then there's the critical issue of access.
Yeah.
That was highlighted starkly by findings like those in the India Justice Report 2025 that you included.
Yes, the Karnataka situation was quite sobering.
Tell us about that. The report noted that a staggering 80% of prisoners are under trials. People in jail still waiting for their trial.
80%. Some wait years, often simply because they can't afford legal representation. It's a huge barrier.
In compounding this, the analysis mentioned the drastic reduction in village legal service clinics in Karnataka.
Down to just 32 left from an earlier 157. That's a massive drop in grassroots access to legal help.
And that lack of access has a very direct, very problematic consequence, doesn't it?
It does. It leaves people feeling abandoned by the formal system. Like they have no viable option but to take matters into their own hands.
And that's when things get dangerous.
That's precisely when you see the rise of vigilantism, escalating community clashes, and exactly the kind of dramatic, often violent showdowns we're talking about avoiding. It feeds the cycle.
Plus, just the practical side. The sheer impenetrable jargon, the confusing forms, it can make the whole system feel deliberately opaque.
Like it's actively trying to shut people out rather than help them navigate it. It's intimidating. So let's place this discussion within the larger context of a country like India. It's huge, incredibly diverse,
A melting pot.
a melting pot, and inevitably a landscape just ripe for disagreements of all kinds. Think about it. Long-standing land feuds in rural Uttar Pradesh, complex water-sharing battles between states like Karnataka and Tamil Nadu.
Constant friction points.
Exactly. The legal system, despite all the flaws we've just discussed, is arguably the single most critical framework preventing these constant, varied disagreements from escalating into widespread, unmanageable chaos.
It's like the container holding it all together, however fragile.
It really is. It's the shared mechanism, imperfect as it is.
And if we broaden the view beyond India, we see other societies grappling with this exact same choice, right? Between spontaneous outrage and structured process.
Absolutely. The U.S. example from your material, the 2025 Cedric Lodge conviction.
Oh, the Harvard morgue manager case. Grim.
Very grim. Involved selling body parts. But it's a stark reminder that even incredibly gruesome and morally outrageous situations require the legal system for formal accountability and consequence. Public outrage was immense, understandably.
Okay.
But it was the court that delivered the necessary legal judgment, the conviction.
Outrage doesn't sentence anyone.
Precisely. And looking at Pakistan's context, we saw Nawaz Sharif's calls in 2024 for peace and reopening trade with India.
Right. That highlighted economic disputes, too.
Yes. His argument that bypassing direct routes was unnecessarily costly underscores the same fundamental point. Economic disputes, too, need established legal and diplomatic channels.
Not just political posturing.
Relying purely on nationalistic posturing or political face-offs bypasses the more efficient, less costly paths available through structured engagement through agreed rules.
So this is where it really comes back to you, the listener. Your choice matters in this larger dynamic.
It really does.
The system, as imperfect and frustrating as we've said it is ultimately for everyone, not just lawyers in robes or people in fancy suits.
And we saw the point made very clearly in the analysis. Every single time you make the deliberate choice,
A conscious choice.
the conscious choice to file a formal complaint, to seek mediation, or pursue a legal avenue, however difficult it seems, instead of just escalating into a shouting match or some public confrontation.
You're actually doing something important.
You are, in a small but significant way, reinforcing and strengthening that essential system. It's like choosing the healthy salad over the greasy burger.
Huh. Not as satisfying, maybe, right now.
Not as satisfying in the moment, perhaps, but it's fundamentally better for you and for the overall health of the system in the long run.
Or like choosing the sturdy umbrella over just dancing defiantly in a thunderstorm.
Exactly. That's a great one. It's not as cool or dramatic, maybe, but it is significantly more effective at keeping things from getting completely soaked, chaotic, and out of control.
And absolutely, we have to acknowledge that accessing the system can feel incredibly hard, overwhelming, frustrating.
Yeah.
As the material noted, it can feel like trying to get a train ticket during Diwali.
Totally overcrowded, confusing forms, long lines, and for many people, just prohibitively expensive. It's a real barrier.
But remember that lesson from the Noida biryani incident again. What started as a seemingly small disagreement, a personal face-off, it escalated dramatically. It ended up drawing in the courts and creating all sorts of unforeseen, complex problems for everyone involved.
It's spun out of control.
Completely. So the core message from your sources seems persistent. Sticking to the legal route, challenging as it is,
Even if it means grappling with difficult forms or enduring delays.
is generally the more reliable, more responsible path to a true enforceable resolution. It might not feel good, but it works better.
Now, fixing the system. That's definitely work in progress. It's not a quick fix by any stretch. It requires a pretty significant, sustained overhaul.
Absolutely. But your material did point to some glimmers of hope, didn't it?
It did. Small steps, but important ones.
The Supreme Court's push for virtual hearings in 2025. That seems like a concrete step toward making justice more physically accessible for more people.
It absolutely is. Reduces travel time, costs, makes it easier for people in remote areas, and the government's announcement of a new census, May 20th, 2025.
Right, how does that connect?
Well, that could provide crucial data. You simply cannot effectively allocate resources for things like legal aid or improving judicial infrastructure if you don't truly understand the size and scope of the problem.
You need the numbers.
You need to know where the needs are greatest, who is being left behind, because fundamentally, you can't fix a problem if you don't truly know its size and scope.
That makes perfect sense. So the core message we found ourselves left with after going through all this material is Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The next time you feel that surge of conflict, that urge for an immediate showdown, just take that crucial breath. Pause. Consciously consider the legal route over the face-off. It is not glamorous. It is often frustratingly slow.
We know.
But it is the reliable, necessary path to resolution and stability in the long run.
And for a society to truly function and thrive, we need to cultivate trust in that legal process. We have to acknowledge its flaws, yes, but also actively demand the necessary reforms.
Push for more judges.
Better legal aid, faster trials, simpler processes for everyone, all while resisting that very innate human urge to turn every single disagreement into a public spectacle or a personal war.
Yeah, there was that slightly humorous but very true takeaway from the analysis, wasn't there?
What was that?
The system might be incredibly slow, maybe slower than a tortoise deciding where to have lunch.
Okay.
But it is still, undeniably, our absolute best bet at preventing society from just devolving into a constant chaotic reality show gone horribly wrong.
That sums it up pretty well. And perhaps the most powerful thought to leave you, the listener, with after exploring this dynamic is considering the quiet, cumulative power of individual choices. What might society fundamentally look like if even a slightly larger percentage of those daily disputes, big and small, personal and political, found their way to reasoned process?
Even with all its imperfections?
Even with all its imperfections, instead of just raw emotional confrontation. Every single decision, every time you choose to channel conflict through the challenging but necessary channels available, it contributes.
To the bigger picture.
It contributes to the larger, stronger fabric of a more just and orderly society. It actually matters.
It's a thought worth sitting with, for sure. Until the next deep dive.